ਜਸਟਿਸ ਦੇ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਡੰਕਨ ਵੈਬ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਸਾਊਥ ਆਈਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਬਿਊਟੀਫੁਲ ਸਿਟੀ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਟਚਰਚ ਸੈਂਟਰਲ ਤੋਂ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਰ-ਵਾਰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਟਰਾਂਸਲੇਟ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ। ਸੋ I would like to say welcome to the show, Dr. Duncan Webb.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Wonderful. I think this is your first time to be with the ethnic radio, especially with the Punjabi radio.
I have. Well, they have. I have been in some Punjabi radio in Christchurch, but not with you before. So it's good to be here.
Excellent. Dr. Duncan, as you born in England, which is very familiar with this multicultural environment already, but in the meantime, your portfolio is quite sensitive, though. In this country, we are struggling with the situation, looking at the justice side, looking at the youth offenders. How do you feel about the coordination of Justice Department with youth offenders matter, particularly dealing with Oranga Tamariki?
Oh, look, I think that's really, really important. I think Oranga Tamariki has a big job ahead of it. And this government has made it clear that it as we all do, want to bring youth offending down. And I think Oranga Tamariki's got a part to play there. And I think because there's two ways to address youth offending. One is at the beginning of the kind of process, and one is at the end. And Oranga Tamariki have an ability to get into families and to help them before the youth offending starts. We know where the risks are, those really difficult families on low incomes with perhaps, drug addiction problems and things like that. That's where we need to be focusing our attention on things that we know work. And certainly the circuit breaker stuff that we were doing in the last government, which this government is continuing with, which is really intensively getting into those families of those young people and giving them a huge amount of attention and support, that actually reduced reoffending by around 70%. So that's good stuff. And Oranga Tamariki was a huge part of that.
Do you think we need to reset some of the public departments, including Oranga Tamariki?
Oranga Tamariki has, in its reporting, has shown that it's struggled to deliver in the way we want it to for quite some time. One of its challenges right now is that all of that work it's doing with social workers, with lawyers around kids, and with psychologists takes resources, and it's just been told to cut 6.5% of its resources. So, my concern for Oranga Tamariki is, yes, we need it to lift its game, but it's hard to say on the one hand, lift your game, and on the other hand, take millions of dollars out of the budget and make people redundant, including people who are actually assisting family and assisting courts in making good decisions around what to do with those really struggling families.
Good to hear this valid point, actually. It's been in the news for long time. Are you happy with the overall situation looking at the law and order in the country?
No, and I never will be, because we know that in large societies there's always going to be some people with problems and some people who misbehave and some bad people, and we need to address that. So if you're ever happy with that, you shouldn't be in politics. So we do need to continually be thinking about how we address that, how we make it so that people have better choices, so they don't do things like join gangs, which are terrible criminal institutions, and also so that when people do get into trouble and say go to prison, we can give them some options so that they know when they get out they don't want to go back to the life they had. And of course we need to have a system where people are truly dangerous, the community is made safe from them.
Are you okay with 3 strikes bill about the offenders?
Well, look, we tried 3 strikes bill, and we saw that where the 3rd strike happened on a number of situations, it was for offences that you and I, I'm sure, would both agree didn't deserve very, very long prison sentences. There was the guy who was mentally impaired who kissed a woman. That's an indecent assault. That was his 3rd strike for that kind of behaviour.
Okay.
and he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for that. And he was a guy with limited intellectual capacity, some struggling mental health issues, and this, and terrible behaviour that we needed to get on top of. But it was a waste. $203,000 a year to put him in prison. Now, $203,000 a year spent on that problem is not best spent by sending that person to prison. He needs mental health support and social support.
But in the yeah, but Dr. Webb, in the meantime, we can see that the disconnection between the mental health issues and the funding and the support system in place, this is not enough.
Yeah. Now, look, I think that is a really, really good point. That you've invited me on as a justice spokesperson.
Yeah.
Justice is at the end of the line. In fact, when justice kicks in, a whole lot of
Yeah.
other things have failed. So our health system, our economy, our mental health system, our social services system, if all of those things, the better that they work, the less work there is for the justice system to do. People going to prison is a sign of failure in a whole lot of ways.
Yeah.
So we need to stop seeing justice as simply about punishing people and recognizing that it's actually connected with the mental health system. I mean, one of my concerns is that the police have recently said because they're stretched, they can't
Hmm.
attend mental health incidents. So they're not, if someone rings up and says, I'm feeling suicidal, the
Okay.
police would previously have attended. Now
Yes.
they won't. But we haven't got another service that will attend. So a gap has opened up. That's not good for our health system or our justice system.
I think this is very valid point. In the meantime, we need to bridge that gap. In the meantime, are you quite hopeful from the budget?
Look, we know what this government's policy is around the budget, and it's a policy to reduce spending. We've
Okay.
seen just yesterday, the government announced that they're stopping grants to
Yeah.
young people who want to buy their first home loan. Now, we think that those grants were a good thing because we think people owning their own home is a great thing to aspire to, and helping people get there a little bit faster
Yeah.
was a really good thing to do. So I think we can expect to see more of that, more
Okay.
programs which were helping ordinary people get ahead. That's going to be, we're going to see that disappear. We know there'll be tax cuts. We don't know how they're going to be afforded or how big they'll be. Nicola Willis went into the election staking her career on tax cuts, but I've got a suspicion that they will be slightly less than were pitched or significantly less. And we also want to know where the money's coming from. She can only borrow so much to pay for tax cuts. And if she's going to impose some more taxes elsewhere, I think that would be a real concern given what she said going into the election.
Okay. What will be there for the justice system? Looking at the overall picture or the equation of the country, we are such a small nation. We need more support system in place, especially the migrant communities. They don't have much awareness about the law of the country in different aspects.
Yeah,
So,
and
can we expect something?
yeah, look, I think the justice system is critical. What we absolutely don't want to see is a reduction in the amount of money that goes into justice. I've just come out of a select committee talking about elections and the fact that we need funding in there,
Yeah.
particularly for people like our ethnic communities who need to. We need to make sure that we're communicating in an appropriate way, ideally in a language which is well understood, and also that the voting places are culturally safe. They don't feel that they're unfamiliar or anything like that, and that all takes resources. So look, I'm hopeful that there will be good funding for some of those programs, but this is against the background of a government who's cutting the public service, cutting people who work for things like the Electoral Commission and the courts, and saying that they want 6.5 cuts across the board. So it's going to be very tight. As a government, and people in Parliament, we
Yeah.
demand a lot of our public service, but we do have to make sure they've got the resources to do it.
Let me acknowledge you as a central Christchurch member of parliament. It's truly multicultural face of the country, and people do acknowledge your contribution, your presence in different occasions in central Christchurch and different parts of Canterbury. In the meantime, what is your thought, and how you can reflect your thought in the parliament in upcoming session?
Look, there's a lot going on in Parliament at the moment. We've got a lot happening in the justice sector. I know Ginny Anderson's seeking to introduce a bill around stalking, and we know that that's something that affects a lot of communities. When essentially people often break up relationships, or there's been some shows on Netflix and so on, this has been in the media, and we do actually need to make sure we protect everyone, whether they're male or female or from whatever community. But the idea of kind of
I want to remind
harassing
you,
people,
Dr. Webb, I want to remind you that young lady who was law student, Farzana Yakubi, So I think this
yes,
is much needed task you guys are
and
doing at the
she was a
moment.
woman. I think was she from the Afghan community? I
That's right.
think,
That's right.
and that was a terrible tragedy, and so sad. And one of the issues, as I understand that case, was the police were not sufficiently sensitive to her cultural needs, that
That's right.
she was finding it really difficult to seek help for this person who was stalking her. And when she did cry out for help, that should have been listened to much more carefully and taken much more seriously. And that was a
Exactly.
cultural gap. And we've got to be acutely aware of that.
As a opposition justice spokesperson, what else you want the government should do in upcoming sessions and particularly in budget? I'm very sure you will be chasing them all the way.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Look, one of the places we need more resources is corrections.
Yes.
We know that, we know it's expensive to have people in corrections, and both in probation and in prison, but it's no good just putting them there, because the whole idea of corrections, it's in their name, is that when people come out the other end, they
Well
are
said.
better.
Well
And
said. If the name is correction, they need to be correct.
that's right, and correcting. So what we need is to make sure that good programs are that people can, have visits with their family and things like that, can learn the things that they learn in prison, like reading and writing and basic skills, but also do those programs, whether it be anger management or, the sexual offending programs that go on, or the addiction programs. It's no good going into prison with these problems and coming out with the same problems. So we need a correction framework which is resourced for that, but also they need to actually deliver. And at the moment, they're not delivering. We've got to change that.
Oh, well, as long as you realize you will work on it, I'm very sure. And thank you very much. Keep up the spirit. And is there anything else you want to update to your audience sitting in different parts of the country?
Well, if you're not in Christchurch, come to Christchurch. It's a fantastic city to visit, and of course, in many parts of South Asia, there's not a lot of snow. Christchurch is very close to the mountains, and I know many people from our Indian and Asian communities love to visit the snow, which is about an hour's drive from Christchurch this winter. So come on down. It's a fabulous city. I'd love to see you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Duncan Webb. And I hope next time you will greet our audience in Punjabi, say Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal. I will work on that.
Thank you very much. And you have a good day and keep up good work.
Thank you
very
bye-bye.
much. Excellent. Bye-bye. ਦੋਸਤੋ ਇਸ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਡੰਕਨ ਵੈਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਟਚਰਚ ਸੈਂਟਰਲ ਤੋਂ ਲੇਬਰ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੁੱਦਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਚੁੱਕੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਸਪੋਕਸਪਰਸਨ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਦੇ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਉਦਮ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਚਰਚਾ ਕੀਤੀ। ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਔਰੰਗਾ ਤਾਮਾਰੀਕੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਆਰਡੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਸਵੇਰੇ ਸੁਰਿੰਦਰ ਗਰਚਾ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਪੁਲਿਸ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਤੇ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਕੁ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ। ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਇਹ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਦੇਰ ਦਬਾਅ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਰੱਖਣਗੇ, ਉਨੀ ਦੇਰ ਸੱਤਾਧਾਰੀ ਧਿਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਠਜੋੜ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬੈਠੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਕਾਨੂੰਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੌਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰੇ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਯੂਥ ਅਫੈਂਡਰਸ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਪਰਾਧੀ ਨੇ, ਸਾਡੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਜ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਪਰਾਧ ਬਿਰਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣ ਦੇ ਮੂਲ ਕਾਰਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚਰਚਾ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਡਾਕਟਰ ਡੰਕਨ ਵੈਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਪੈਰਵਾਈ ਕਰਦੇ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਏ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਲੈਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰੇਰਿਤ ਕਰਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਹੀ ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਜਾਗਰੂਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਲਾਜ਼ਮੀ ਹੈ। ਆਉਂਦੇ ਸਮਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਮਹਿਮਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੋਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਡੰਕਨ ਵੈਬ ਹੋਣਾ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਰੀਬ੍ਰੌਡਕਾਸਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਮੈਂ ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਨਵਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਨਿਕਲ ਕੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਵੇਗਾ। ਆਪਣਾ